Well, thank you for watching this. I'm Nathan Kaufman, and I'm here with special guest Ray Martino. He's the founder of Martino-Flynn in Rochester, New York. He's a local marketing icon, and he is also now an educator at Nazareth College. So, Ray, thanks for jumping on a call today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this, and for a variety of reasons that, we for sure hold you in high esteem, and a lot of people that are in the Rochester market have heard your name and either been a part of your organization or worked with people that were in your organization previously. So it's exciting to talk to a marketer of your capabilities. How are you, by the way? What's new this week?
Well, I'm doing well. I just recently, on July 4th, celebrated my 71st birthday. So, so obviously, I'm considered elderly by the standards of the pandemic.
You'd never know it. You'd never know it, Ray.
So I didn't wear my mask.
Happy birthday!
In my basement. But anyway,
how was your birthday party? By the way, was it a good party? Quarantine and all?
It was virtual, so it was okay. But right. I'm just happy to be here. I missed the fireworks, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, Ray, I mentioned you founded an agency, you're an educator, you're a professor of marketing, strategic communications, I think more specifically. Mm-hmm. Could you give a quick synopsis of your career in marketing and what's brought you here?
Right. Okay. When I was 7 years old, and I'll do this in 2 minutes.
You're good. I've seen you do it. I know you can.
I got a little print. I got a little print.
He has all these printed off. These are all in.
I got a little printing press with rubber type, and my friend and I went door to door with little handbills we printed, trying to get printing jobs, and didn't get any. But I didn't give up. So I've been doing a lot of things to try to make money ever since I was 7. But I settled into communications and public relations and marketing after college, and worked in higher ed marketing for 14 years at St. John Fisher and U of R. And in both cases, I had a board of trustees member and then a supervisor tell me that I should leave higher ed and get into business because I have an entrepreneurial bent, and I do. And I think I got it from my grandfather, who came over from this country all by himself as a kid and started a grocery store. And he always told me about it. And I always thought, if you're gonna be fulfilled in your career, you should do what you have a passion for. And I've had a passion for starting and building businesses and helping others do the same. So I've invested in startups. I've had startups that I started, and it's the most stimulating to me. But on a parallel path, I taught at St. John Fisher in the 70s and 80s, and then I took time off to grow my business, but I always wanted to come back to it when I retired from my marketing agency. So in the last 5 years, I've taught at Nazareth in the School of Business and Leadership. We just recently changed our name. And I'm teaching marketing strategy. I'm teaching communications courses and persuasion and PR writing, etc. So what I want to do at this stage in my career is to help others, help students, and help budding entrepreneurs to do what I was fortunate to have done.
Ray, you've done a lot of things. You've started a lot of things. Would you say that being an entrepreneur and a marketer are two sides of the same coin? How commingled are they, entrepreneurs and marketers? Because I see them sometimes as different hats. Some people see them as one and the same. What's your take on that? Truly being both. For sure, you're an entrepreneur and you have to be a marketer. But for others, what do you think there's a difference?
Yeah, sure. There is a difference, of course. You can start a business like Bill Gates, and he doesn't strike me as a marketer necessarily, but I think if you're an entrepreneur, you have a great idea, and no one could do everything to implement it. You always need people. You need a team. I don't think any one entrepreneur has succeeded on his or her own. So if you're not good at marketing, you bring in marketing talent. And I think that's, frankly, the success of the marketing professionals like you and me, is that we work with people who are entrepreneurs, but they may not be marketers. You can't have a successful company without marketing. It's absolutely critical. If you're a great marketer, you still have to have a good idea and have to be an operations person to succeed. So it's very hard to find all the skills requisite in having a successful business in one person. Marketing is definitely a management function, but it's not the one and the same. An entrepreneur has to be many, many things, wear many hats.
And I think that maybe the same goes for the education side, education on marketing, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
An entrepreneur would still need to go through the educational process of becoming a marketer, or at least get adept enough to be able to know what type of marketing to bring in.
Right.
I'm assuming.
Right.
You started off with a true entrepreneurial venture versus going through more of a standard path and getting into a marketing company or an agency. Do you think that in the agency, and you, but very much being in the agency world, did you find yourself as one of many entrepreneurs in that agency world, or and at least at the time you started agencies, were you more, did you feel like you were an entrepreneur in that world and kind of doing something different?
Yes. Well, I think the difference between an agency owner and an agency employee is the owner is the entrepreneur. You often have people with an entrepreneurial spirit and that like being around entrepreneurs. But I really started my agency, quite honestly, because I couldn't find a job in an agency. In those days, it was like getting a job as a Major League Baseball coach. You can't get a job coaching unless you've already been a coach. And you can't get a job in an agency unless you're working at an agency, which I said, well, I better just start my own. But I had
I think that's a great reason. That's a great way. And I know a lot of us have done so.
Right. So I think that's another aspect of an entrepreneur, that you have to be adaptable and you have to do what needs to be done. And I've done everything in the business because I had to. Not that I was necessarily good at it, but as our agency grew, we were able to hire specialists to do the kinds of things I wasn't very good at. But I mean, when I first started, it was just me, and I would design ads, I would write copy, I would deal with printers. There wasn't an internet at the time I started, but you have to be a jack of all trades, in a sense.
Right. What were the things, you mentioned some of the skills that you had? You have to do, at least for a while, you have to do everything. What were the first things you started hiring in that weren't your expertise? What were the first few things, if you remember it specifically?
Yep. I think
you're like, I need to stop doing this myself as the entrepreneur and bring on help, because I think that's a sticky point for so many self-starters is what do I give up?
Right. I think the first person I hired was a combination, was a graphic artist and combination writer, a creative person. As I was growing my agency, I had to sell. You got to go out and get business. And getting business is the most time-consuming part of the job. So when I started getting business and I had to create it, I couldn't do it all myself.
Right.
So I hired a creative person first, and then grew it. And then I think the next person was a PR person. And then eventually I hired media people, and then you build an infrastructure. But I think the owner has to be focused on sales first and always. You got to keep, if you don't grow, you get smaller. There's no question about it.
Right. And the owner has to take the leadership to bring in the new business, and bringing in the new business isn't just about selling. It's also about being out there representing what you want the organization to be. Right. Is kind of my thought. And so you stayed the generalist until you needed to focus and you didn't have enough time to do all of it. Exactly. But you led with creative. What was after creative and some of those specific needs? Did you bring on a lot more generalists, or is it really then a specialist model after that for growing the agency?
It was a specialist model at the time, and that was going back to the 90s. I think that hasn't changed much. I think there's still a role in marketing for tacticians, specialists, and no one can be really good at everything. Even more so now, I think there's more specialty in the agency world today than there used to be. You've got digital media buyers, you've got traditional media buyers. They're starting to blend, but some people are good account people where they have good relationships with good relationship people. I think you have to you have to have technicians as well as strategists and marketers. And I think the word marketing, and the way I use it, it's really sales. I mean, when I first started my agency, I was all by myself. I would make a point to go to networking events 4 or 5 times a week, to the Chamber of Commerce, the Marketing Association, whatever it was. And I would take speaking opportunities at Rotaries. I do whatever I could to get out in front of people. And I did, it was hard. I remember pulling up in my car to the Chamber of Commerce building, having this anxiety attack, taking a deep breath and saying, I got to do this. And I did it. You know, you got to do it. It's hard. But if someone thinks they could start a business and, you know, people will come just because you started a business, you're deluding yourself. People who say, I got more business than I know what to do with, they're deluding themselves. you got to keep the hop filled.
Well, it's good knowing that you also have had those pits in your stomach, anxiety before networking events. I know a lot of people getting started deal with that, but you got to push through and do it. Now, Ray, you talked about the need still being a specialist model, which I totally agree. I think there needs to be a general understanding of all the tools now. Someone can't live in a silo like maybe they could before. So there needs to be, I think, general understanding. But then to do well at anything at a high level, you really need to specialize. That's been what I've placed a lot of bets on, at least. So that's good to hear.
Think so, yeah.
And then now you're an educator.
Mm-hmm.
Now, training marketers in a specialty or in general communications, or how do you train marketers, and how is the educational process and in higher education, which I believe, I am a believer in higher education, and just talk about that.
Sure.
Training marketers, doing marketing. What are some of the differences, maybe some of the similarities in those processes?
Well, I would draw a distinction at the outset between undergraduates and graduate students, and I teach both. I tend to teach undergraduates in communications and media, and then graduate students in the marketing, the business leadership, marketing leadership program. Undergraduates just need a 30,000-foot view of what it is. You're telling them what the whole industry's like, what the basic principles are. You bring in history, you teach them theory. I also bring in guest speakers because I want them to know what it's going to be like. Because even if you're an English major, you got to be thinking about, how am I going to put food on the table after I get out of college? So I want them to be critical thinkers. I want them to have a broad view of society. And there's a lot of things that a liberal arts college like Nazareth College does to create a broad, open thinking person. Like, I was an economics major as an undergraduate. That could have meant anything. I could have gone in a lot of different directions, but my basis in business came from economics and my understanding of how an economy works. So undergraduates need to have a broad understanding of what the world of commerce is. Graduate students I teach them marketing strategy, to teach them how to be strategists, to be strategic thinkers, not so much tacticians. I teach persuasive communications, where I teach them the principles of how to convince people of your way of thinking, how to change people's minds and help influence their actions. So I think that it's a combination of things. I try to mix reality with theory. And I bring in people like you to speak to my class, and they were excited to hear about your tended bar venture. They go, wow, that was exciting. I'd like to do something like that someday. And I said, well, it doesn't just happen. You have to understand how it works to do a startup. And we talk about value. We talk about how to create markets, how to understand the competition. So there's a lot involved, and it depends on the school that offers the program. If you go to a school like Simon's School at the U of R, it's going to be much more quantitative. RIT might be more entrepreneurial. Nazareth College is really a liberal arts college that has a business school. So it's going to vary from school to school. But I think I've taught hundreds of students actually over the last 5 years, and stayed in touch with a lot of them and really taken interest in their careers. And I've had them ask for my advice. Some of them have started their own businesses, and that's really rewarding to me. So a lot of different ways you can go, but I think you have to be to be a good business person. I think to be successful, you have to be intelligent, well-rounded, and ethical. And I look for all three things in people. And the ethics part has to do with having a strong work ethic. People if someone's interested in a get rich quick scheme, I'm not interested in them. To grow a business, you have to be willing to work really hard for really long, as you know. So, right.
And yeah, absolutely. The get rich quick schemes, it's overnight successes take 20 years, right?
Right. Right.
I like that the answer to the question about educating marketers was not something about lining them up to then be able to pick up tactics, but it was about training the whole person. And that is, to me, that is what the essence of higher education is. It's higher for a reason. It's ideals. It's building an understanding of the world. I think there's a need for marketers that have ethics, have a moral compass, and then can get into specialties where they can make hopefully a profound impact with businesses growing, which is where we need people.
Exactly.
Having visited the class, it was a great experience.
I'm glad you're coming again.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Let me close on
again.
that. You're going to come again, aren't you?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Anytime. And what's something you're hopeful right now, Ray? I know you're one of the most positive people that I get to speak with from time to time, and you always have something you're excited about, something positive spin on anything, it seems like. So leave us with something positive that you're hopeful for, as broad or as narrow as you want it to be, just to know kind of where you're at.
Okay. Well, I think that I actually am drawing a lot of positives from this pandemic, believe it or not. I think what it's made me realize, and what a lot of people realize, is how important relationships are, whether they be business relationships, family relationships, friendships. I think people are realizing in times of, or they realize in times of crisis what's important. And I think what's going to happen is I'm seeing how people are being resourceful during times when times are hard. When times are good, it's easy to be successful. I mean, I remember in my business career, there were some years where business was booming because the economy was booming. And then we'd hit a recession and I go, oh my God, I forgot how hard this was. Well, I think this is making us realize how hard things can be. And I see that the businesses that are going to survive and thrive are the ones that the people that were hard workers to start with, ethical people, people that really care about other people. And your clients will respond to that. And so I think you're going to see, and also I think you're going to see a lot of entrepreneurs come out of this, out of necessity. I mean, I was actually started a business out of necessity to some extent because I needed the money. I was growing a family, I was moonlighting. Then I realized I'm not going to do what I want to do with my family if I work for somebody else. I got to do this on my own. So I think that's what's going to happen. I just talked to a former employee who was laid off from his job 2 days ago. And I said, what should I do? I said, well, why don't you think about, I need to find another job. And I said, I think you should realize now that there's no such thing as a secure job. Maybe you should start a business, start your own business. And we talked about that. And he goes, my wife told me the same thing. Having heard it from you now, maybe I will. So that's what I'm optimistic about. I think you're going to see a lot of success stories come out of this, rise from the ashes. I think a lot of great businesses started during the Depression. And I think in the 30s, I think you're going to see a lot of great businesses come out of this because, the people will rise. The people who have the ability will say, hey, wait a minute, there's an opportunity here. And there's always opportunity in a capitalistic economy. So that's my optimism. Absolutely. I really believe that.
I love it. That is inspirational. I agree with you. And I think it underscores the need for good people and good people with big ideas who really have an understanding of the world. So then they have something worth marketing, right?
Right.
So Ray, thanks for the inspiration. I always love talking with you. So I appreciate the time you took to share some of your story, and we'll have more updates on the class and on where that's going. I'll look forward to the fall.
Great. Thanks, Nathan.
All right. Thanks, Ray. Bye.